Welcome to the Pathways Podcast, where we explore the unique journeys and key moments along the way that have shaped the lives and careers of our guests, and where we also discuss culture, tastes, and time-honored traditions that help define who we are. Dr. Lockhart, thanks for coming. Excited to have you, and very honored to have you today. Tell us what's going on with Valdosta City Schools and where you've come from. Congratulations on coming up on 2 years.
Thank you.
And so, fill us in on what's going on.
Well, so first of all, John and Jeremy, thank you both for inviting me to come out today. I'm Craig Lockhart, and I am the proud superintendent here in Valdosta City Schools. Valdosta City Schools has a very rich tradition of winning, and we're trying to make sure that we carry that in every single thing that we do. We want to win on and off of the football field and everywhere we go. Growing up, I grew up in Middle Georgia, and everybody always knew about Valdosta. It's a crazy
That's
thing.
true. Everywhere you go.
Everywhere you go, everybody knows that black and gold. They know Valdosta. I was actually at an airport, and I had on my Valdosta gear, and I was in Pittsburgh, and a group of young boys that came up to me, they said, "Is that Valdosta?" I said, "Yes, it is," and I felt like a celebrity. And my point being, it's a history of such tradition and such pride. So I'm just really honored to have been selected as the 11th superintendent here, to be able to carry on that tradition. It's a heavy responsibility, but nothing is more noble than being able to serve and support such a beloved city. Love it.
Yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about. I read the letter that you put out right after you accepted the job. Tell us a little bit about the 3V initiative: vision, values, and victory.
I sure will. So I think I want to start by telling you a little bit about my background as far as how I got here.
Yeah.
I have been in the business for about 28 years. And I spent the first 4.5 years as a teacher. I've done high school, middle school, all of that stuff. But I went into administration fairly early. So I've been in administration for the majority of my career, elementary principal and high school principal. And I was a central office person for a while. But I really want to speak about the elementary and high school experiences and my last superintendency. I was in places they really were struggling with an identity crisis. You know, the world is changing. Sure. And the same thing's true with Valdosta City. So there's who we used to be, and there's who we are now, and you're trying to figure out what's our identity. So in my previous experiences, I knew that branding was essential. Okay, and so you fast forward to Valdosta City, I'm walking in, and again, everything about Valdosta City, in my opinion, is top notch. At the same time, everybody has to have a brand. Yeah. You look at major industries, everybody has to have logos, marketing, and all of that. So I had been named as the superintendent, and the funny thing about being named as the superintendent or getting any major job, you work so hard to get the job, and once they tell you, congratulations, you have it, now it's like, well, what do I do? What's next here? Exactly. But seriously, I said I wanted to make sure that we had a vision. Yep. And so I was sitting in my yard. I'm a spiritual person, and so I was just asking God. I'm like, good. What do we need to carry forth? And it just hit me, the 3V initiative, because the Valdosta, the V. And so we have vision, values, and victory. And I always say it in that order: vision, values, victory. But for this conversation, I want to take them out of order. Our vision really is about student achievement. I really believe in children having access to a high quality life. The only way you're gonna have a great life is you have to have an education.
Yes.
A formal schooling education, and our children deserve not just an education, but the best education. A quality education, because our world is so much smaller than when we were children. And I'm not gonna date myself. I think
Don't
you guys
date any
are
of us,
probably
okay.
a little younger than me. But when I grew up, I thought that if you drove where I was living at the time, I said if you drove past Macon, you probably fall off the end of the earth.
Yes.
And then you grow a little older, you say, well, if I go past Atlanta, I'm surely gonna fall over the edge. Our world is global now. We can now communicate with people anywhere in the world. We can have a business in one country and live in another country all at the same time. Our children have to be global competitors. It's not about, we talk about the Valdosta Lounge rivalry. Well, that's nice. And we need that for the day-to-day passion. Yeah. It's fun. Yeah. Most times. Except when you lose. When you lose, it's not fun. But
that's true anytime.
I agree.
But our children are not competing necessarily with the neighboring school system.
Right. Sure.
You're competing with people in Singapore, in Brazil, in Ghana. You're competing in Canada. You're competing with everybody. So our children have to be equipped with the best academic programming possible. So that's what I talk about when I say vision. It's about us taking a pause and saying, what are we really here for? And what we're here for is making sure that children walk across the stage with the ability to get a meaningful job. And I have to put that word meaningful in there because we can go out and get hired at a lot of different places, but can we have a affordable living wage? Right. Can I pay my bills? Can I do more than just pay my bills? I'm glad to pay my bills, but sometimes I want to take a vacation. Sometimes I want to treat myself. Can I have a high quality of life? Education is essential for that. Yeah. So that's what I talk about with vision. I'll shift over to victory. And when I talk about victory, I'm really talking about making sure that our adults in our school system are able to operate at the highest and most efficient levels. Are our operations sound? Is our school food, is it the best quality that we can produce? Are our buses on time? Are they traveling safely? So we have to work on those things. Are our buildings clean? Are our teachers are they getting the training they need to meet today's learner? What you needed to know in 1985 is very different than what you need to know in 2025. And so again, are our teachers up to date on the latest innovations to be able to prepare people? Do we have the leadership talent that we need? We all see it. We've grown through it year after year. Leadership matters. Yes. You have to have very, very strong leadership in every area. We're in the process right now of undertaking a 3-year program called Leader in Me in our school systems. And Leader in Me is a scientifically proven strategy to not only improve leadership quality with our administrators, but our teachers, and most importantly, our students. Our students need to see the leader within themselves. Our teachers need to realize just because you have a principal and assistant principal, that does not mean that you are not a leader. Right. You are very much a leader. That's right. You're a leader of that classroom. Many of them coach. If you're a coach, you are a leader. Our custodians are leaders. There are children who look up to their custodians just to that degree. When I was a first grader, due to my upbringing, I didn't have, my father's very much in my life, but he wasn't in the house. Gotcha. So when I went to school, there was it was a dishwasher at the time. This was before they had the machines to wash the lunchroom trays. And his name was Mr. John. And I would see Mr. John every single day. He had this smile on his face, and he was cleaning those dishes. And I remember going home saying, Mama, When I grow up, I want to be a dishwasher. I want to be Mr. John. Mr. John was somebody who I could identify with. He looked like me, and I saw myself in him. He was a leader to me. Everybody is a leader. So that's what we talk about with the victory piece. The values, and I skipped over that on purpose because values is about character. This is about who we are as human beings, our soft skills. I'm a big believer that that saying yes ma'am and no sir are not dead. Right. We live in a world where we forget about saying please and thank you, I'm sorry, being transparent, being able to be humble, being able to be vulnerable, being that to me, the strongest people are people who can admit that they're wrong or see another side and be able to just say, hey, let's come to the table. We can disagree without being disagreeable. We can come together and make things work. And I want to teach our children and remind our adults that we can have tough conversations, we can be in tough situations, but we can do so with dignity and integrity and with character. We have to teach our children how to speak without without demeaning themselves or the people around them. Yeah. We live in a world nowadays where we, like, you go to the mall, you just or any public place, you can just listen outside, you hear so many things that are not becoming of the best versions of ourselves. Right. And we have to help our children learn that's not the way to be. They are exposed, when you think about social media, the internet, and when we grew up, all you had was outside in nature and your imagination. That's right. Now they are fed 24 hours a day, and the content is not necessarily favorable. And it's our job as a community, those of us who are willing to step up, to show our children there is a better way to be. Frederick Douglass said, and I might get the quote wrong, but to paraphrase, it's easier to raise strong children than to repair broken men. Yeah. When they are adults, it's too late. Okay, they're programmed. You can't change that. But if we can help them as children to display kindness, to display charity and compassion, I think we'll create a much better world. And for me, enough is enough. We've allowed for the world to just, do what it's doing and take us down this bad pathway where it's not serving us. We're not improving, we're not getting any better, and we won't until people have stronger character values and we do better. Does that mean we're not going to make mistakes? Of course we're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I'll probably leave out of here and make a couple today. But it's about getting better every day. That's right. That's what I'm trying to help our children do. I want to say to them, baby, you're gonna make a mistake. You're gonna fail. You're gonna say something inappropriate. You're gonna do something you shouldn't do. But we learn from it and we get better. That's right. So that's vision, values, victory. And in that letter, I will say we talked about the soft V, that village. It's gonna take all of us together. Yeah. No one can turn a blind eye to what's happening in our community, be it Valdosta, Lowndes, Georgia, the U.S., the world. It is going to take every one of us taking responsibility, stop pointing fingers and blaming, and just say, look, y'all, yeah, we have a problem. Let's roll up our sleeves and solve it instead of complaining about it. Complaining won't do it. The village has to come together. Just like when we were children, in the neighborhood, if you got in trouble, everybody knew it and everybody knew how to go up there and take care of it. We've got to get back to that. And in the school system, our schools and the district as a whole have to be able to wrap our arms around every single child and let them know that they are appreciated and we have their back.
Yeah. Wow. We can take a couple hours and go through each one of those.
That's strong, very strong.
That's impressive. I do want to dig into some of those things
Sure.
because they're worthy of our time and attention. Before that, though, June of 23, I think you came over, right? You came from Dooley County,
Yes.
correct? And then prior to that, Newton,
Yes.
right? And so, two questions. First of all, what was it that attracted you to Valdosta? You spoke of the fact that it was widely known, but you're right there in Middle Georgia, close to where you grew up. I'm assuming, and to move away to come to Valdosta. And then all the things that you just mentioned, the vision, the values, the victory. Once you got here, what's been the greatest challenge of implementation? So
Okay.
what brought you here and what's the biggest challenge?
So I want to go back. I think I'll go back to Newton, actually. I had a great superintendent. I was a deputy superintendent. I was a high school principal, then I became deputy superintendent. I spent the majority of my time there in that role. I had a great superintendent in Samantha Fury. She was state superintendent of the year, finalist for national superintendent of the year, and I was there with her for their ride, and we had a great time together. I say that because I did not aspire to become a superintendent from the onset, and so I grew to a place where I said, okay, it's time for me to carve my own path. And she prepared me to do that. And so I'm eternally grateful to her. And so I said, well, it's time to go up there and fulfill my destiny. And so with that, I was able to secure the job in Dooley County. That was one of the most rewarding experiences I ever had. All school systems have challenges, every single one. They all look different. But there were some stronger challenges that we saw in Dooley. And so my job was to come in there and try and see where we can make some changes. And so I was there for 5 years. The average lifespan of a superintendent in Georgia right now is approximately 2.8 years, about 3 years.
Wow.
COVID shortened, the pandemic really shortened that time. And so
It's a short leash.
Yeah, it's a short leash. And so you're looking at less than 3 years for the superintendency. Well, I was there for 5. So, I was in a great place. Wonderful school board. I reached a place in Dooley where I had taken care of the major challenges. We had some schools that needed some support and were highlighted by the state as needing support. We got them off the list. We needed to get some things financially in place. We were able to get that stuff fixed. We needed to restore faith in the leadership. We were able to fix that with a lot of recognitions. So I reached a place where I said, okay, there's nothing left to conquer here. we checked the boxes. Yeah. And so I enjoyed that, but then it was time to go and try something else. So then Valdosta City opened up. And I had a few friends, superintendent colleagues, who said, well, Craig, this might be something you want to look at. And so, and at first I was like, nah, I'm happy here in Dooley. Let's just ride into the sunset with Dooley. But it just kept gnawing at me. And I said, because again, the Valdosta is a jewel, especially for people who live inside of a place. Sometimes we forget
That's right.
how special something is. But to me and many people outside, this is a crown jewel. And so when one friend in particular said, Craig, I really think you need to look at it. And it stuck with me, so I applied. Next thing you know, we're here. So with that being the case, I have 3 daughters. 2 of them have graduated. One's a teacher, and the other, she goes to school at Georgia Tech. And so I didn't have to worry about them, but I had a son who was completing the 10th grade. And that's always your biggest challenge about what happens with children and moving them around and all of that. And so I talked to my wife, and my wife is my rock. She is she's such a strong support system. Everywhere I've traveled to, she's been right there. She said, "All right, let me go get the suitcase and let's make it happen." I mean, and no pushback. Wow. I as a side joke, we joke in the superintendent world that this is the highest paid migrant work that you will find. Okay, because we stay packed up. That's pretty good. But
2.5 years doesn't give you time to settle.
Right. You just don't fully unpack. You keep everything on standby and keep your boxes. But anyway, so she was supportive, and I was afraid for my son. But I said I feel this is a higher calling, and that's very important because the transitions for me have been spiritually driven. I know I listen to when God tells me it's time to shift. It's time to move. And so so we enrolled him in Valdosta High School. Absolutely, he's fallen in love with it. He's in our International Baccalaureate or IB program. He's excelling. And if you have children, all children are different. And so my middle child, she was always the one who was most academically inclined. She gets that from her mother. And so, so Isaiah, he's calmer, quieter, but he got into this IB program and it completely changed his life. He had a biology teacher who lit a fire into him. And so he's always known he wanted to be an engineer. And so he's just been accepted into Georgia Tech, and he's gonna go into biomedical engineering. Okay, and it's because it's because of Valdosta High School, because of the teachers that they have there. And so when I say it was a blessing and I know it was the right move, it's because of his success at Valdosta High School. And so he has never been happier. So so I know it was the right thing. So, and with all of that being said, this is Lord willing. Of course, you have to follow God's plan, but Lord willing, this is my last stop. This is where I want to ride out the career. The school board just approved our strategic plan 2025 to 2030. Again, you never know what God's plan is. However, my goal is to see that strategic plan through at a minimum. Because again, it is not fair to start something, a 5-year plan, and then your leadership shifts and changes. And so my wish is to make sure that I can be there to see the plan through. Valdosta is great. Like every system, we have challenges. There's some things I want to tackle. There are things I want to make sure that we get right for our children. So I intend for this to be the period at the end of the sentence of this book. And I'm excited about what I have. I work with great people. And see, traveling in so many different places, I've seen all types of cultures. Right. And as an outsider coming in, I tell everybody, Valdosta is just a wonderful place to be. Like even when I go through drive-thrus, the customer service, the hospitality I've seen, and a lot of people that I would say that to, they'll be like, really, what? And I knew that whoever was serving me, they did not recognize my face. I knew it was genuine, it was authentic, and I said, wow, they're such nice people. I've actually had people go to the grocery store. I have one item, they'll say, go ahead, get in front of me. And that sort of hospitality and courtesy, you just don't find everywhere else. And I tell people, be grateful for what we have here in Valdosta, because it is a good old-fashioned hospitality that you don't see anywhere else. I was in St. Augustine. This was about a year ago. And so, you get into conversation with people. Sure. And so this person says, so where are you from? I proudly say, I'm from Valdosta. And that gentleman, he said, there's a there's a hospitality there that I just don't see anywhere else. So he was verifying what I have experienced.
Right.
And so yeah, my family, we're happy.
Good.
Yeah.
And so, Dr. Lockhart, the challenges of this 3V plan.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm glad you did that. That was beautiful. But like you said, every school system has unique challenges.
Yeah.
We were talking about that at
Yeah.
Dooley. You come here, it's the jewel. But even, we talk about this all the time. It's important to be content as a leader. Wherever God wants you is where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But never be satisfied. Know that we should always be growing, doing self-assessment.
Right.
How can we get better every day? So talk to us about that. What are some of the challenges?
So the challenge for me is, if I could sum it up in one word, is poverty. The poverty that we have in our community is impacting and affecting our children and consequently our staff and the greater community. Poverty leads to depression, it leads to stress, it leads to crime, and we see it, and all you have to do turn on the TV and we hear it on a weekly basis, and the behaviors that you see in the community spill over into the schools. A school system is a microcosm of the community it serves. If there is stress in the community, you're going to see that same stress in the schools. And so what we're finding is that poverty is impacting our ability to serve our students to the degree we need to. So one thing that we look at in student achievement is what we call the mobility rate. Mobility rate is basically how often does a child move from school to school, from place to place, and what that does to a person. So last year, the average mobility rate of students in the state of Georgia was 13%. For Valdosta City, it is 21%.
Wow.
Okay, which is different from pretty much all of the other districts. There are 180 recognized school districts in the state of Georgia. We rank 178th in mobility. The two systems that are at 179 and 180, they're very, very small school systems that have less than about 400, 500 students each. Okay, and so with that, our mobility rate is higher than Atlanta, than Macon, than Albany, than Columbus, than Savannah, than Augusta. Everywhere, the urban school systems, the larger ones, our children are moving from school to school in between. You don't see it at a high school because we just had one, okay?
Right.
But our elementary schools have been really impacted by the fact that children are moving from school to school. So you think about what happens to a human being, especially a young one, where they're having to leave their house because their apartment, because the rent is too high, so mom has to try to go somewhere else. And you're snatched away from your friends. You're snatched away from their teacher. The trauma that builds up, we all have experienced trauma. Sure. But the children who we're serving in Valdosta City, they are experiencing layers and waves of trauma that I know I didn't grow up having to experience. And I grew up in what would be defined as poverty. But I had a stable, loving home, and I was cared for, and my family did not have external stresses coming in. I did not experience having my lights turned off. I did not experience having to pack my clothes in a trash bag and moving in the middle of the night. Our students are experiencing all of these things in Valdosta City. And it's getting in the way of them receiving an education. A child that, I want to say the word affluent. Affluent really isn't the correct word because affluent means rich. But a child that has means and sustainability, they come to school to learn.
Yeah.
A child that is in distress, in a traumatic environment, they come to school first to be loved, then to learn. We have to, in Valdosta City, what we're facing is we're having to break through to build a healthy, stable relationship with our children first. And once the trust is there, because it's hard to build and maintain trust, once the trust is there, then we're able to open the book to chapter 1 and start trying to learn the multiplication tables and the historical facts. But what we're facing is the disease of poverty and how to address that. So speaking of how to address that, what are we doing? So we have a very strong student support services team. We have social workers. We have counselors. We're looking at investing in mental health counselors. We have a mental health counselor at one of our schools, and we're going to have to look at trying to expand that program just to support our students. And we're really just trying to work to help them meet them where they are. We just opened up what we call the Wildcat Wear Shop. This is at Beckham at Valdosta Early College and Academy. We have an actual store where we receive donations from the community, from organizations, where we just have clothing. Free clothing for families to come in, and they go in, and that's where they're able to meet some of their needs. We have the student uniforms, we have clothing for parents, for families, so that we can take that burden off of the family. Because again, nothing's worse than being an 8-year-old and you have torn clothes or torn shoes. And so now, and unfortunately, children are still children. They're gonna tease. Yeah. And so we have to work through all of those barriers. We have a washer and dryer over there because we have to clean clothes. We have to make sure that our children, that they smell nice, and we can take care of all of those needs. So the challenge that we face is fighting poverty, and we are committed to fight it with every ounce of our being.
It's interesting, and we want to probably shift here and start to go backwards a little bit. Sure. And talk about you as a person a little more, but I'd love to maybe bring this back up in future podcasts, and the connectivity that we talked about before coming in here between the city and county governments, the city and county school systems, the hospital, the university, not only recruiting jobs, but the ecosystem between the education system and those who are trying to recruit employers, and the importance of affordable housing. And I love the way that you brought up this concept of instability versus stability, that it's not just about money.
Right. All right.
It's about stability.
Right.
And a lot of us take that for granted, for sure. But you mentioned, as we shift, that you had that growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And you also mentioned on the front the importance of faith in your walk. I'm glad you volunteered that, because that's typically something we transition to.
Okay.
Because it speaks to your why, right? So we'd like to kind of step back a little bit and we work backwards here, where you are today, and then so tell us a little bit about you and your wife and your family, maybe how you met, that sort of thing, and then take us a little back to Dr. Lockhart, the child, how you began.
So just working backwards, back to my wife. So my wife and I, we met in DeKalb County. We were teachers there. Ironically, it was a brand new middle school that had just opened up. I was the first teacher hired, and she was the last teacher hired. and what happened?
It's the last time you were first.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And after that, everything changed. But yeah, we met while there, and again, and so I had moved. Again, I'm from Middle Georgia, so I had moved to Atlanta. She's from Jackson, Mississippi, so she had moved, and this was her first teaching job. It was my third year teaching. And so, again, we were both transplants. And what happens is, your work family is a true phrase. You become friends because, again, there's nobody else to talk to and connect. But again, over time we became friends, and then fell in love, and so that was fine. And so then the children came along with that. But she's always been my most solid supporter. Along with my mother and father, and they all. It's like having three children, and you love them all the same, but you love them all differently. And so anyway, their approach with me is all different. But of course, she's the one that's had to again pack the bags and make every move. But prior to that, so I went to college in the Fort Valley State University. I was the last graduate of Fort Valley State College before the university system switched them all over and it became a university. And that was in '96. And so, and the reason why I went to Fort Valley, my hometown was Butler, Georgia, Taylor County. So a 20-mile difference. And it goes back to what I said earlier. If you went too far, you would fall off the edge of the earth. And so I was like, no, I'm not going anywhere but to Fort Valley. I said, this is close enough. I feel safe here. Right. And so again,
it's that stability you're talking about.
Stability, and so it was a great collegiate experience. I learned more about who I was as an African American male in this world, and that really helped build my confidence. That was a great experience. Prior to that, grew up in Taylor County, went to school Taylor County my entire career. Absolutely wonderful experience, and again, a diverse community, which allowed me to learn from everybody and be able to love everybody. We're the class of '92. We're coming up on our 35th anniversary, I believe, coming around the corner. And we recently celebrated our 30th, and we all come together. And I just want to share, we're black and white, but we all come together and we all love each other. In a world where there's so much polarization and fear and uncertainty among different types of people. Yeah. Class of '92, Taylor County class of '92, Vikings, which is interesting given where we are now. So I am a Viking to some degree, by birth, Viking by birth, Wildcat by choice. Okay, so,
that's a good phrase.
so anyway, Taylor County Viking, 1992, but that class, when we come together, we're in this bubble where we're one, and we still are, and we love each other. We attend weddings, funerals, all of that stuff together. We're one, and so and that was a blessing for me growing up. Yeah. Just being able to have friends and family of all types. So.
I love what you brought up there, because I had a similar upbringing where, I wasn't taught to look at color or anything like that. Man, we just, whether it was on the farm, working in the farm, or playing sports, they were just friends, right? And having that small town community, but it all goes back to two things: how your home was and your faith. Yep. Right? Yep. And that we're all God's people. And we're all in this together. Right. And we live in a world that constantly wants to put a magnifying glass on our differences. But that represents such a small portion of who we are as people.
That's right.
Talk to us about your faith journey.
So, grew up in the church, and again, I attribute this all to my mother. So in my nuclear household, it was me, my mom, my aunt, and grandmother. I have another aunt who stayed there. She is married, and she and her husband stayed right down the street. And they have a daughter, Tracy. So Tracy, my first cousin, but we grew up virtually as brother and sister. So you have about 7 of us that are there. And so very, very tight, close knit. I grew up. When I was born, again, there was poverty. I actually lived in a time period in which I had an outhouse. We did not have indoor plumbing in the home I was born in. And that was the case until I was in the 3rd grade, before I had an indoor toilet, shower, bath, all of that stuff. So I've been a part. Now I didn't know I was in poverty.
Right.
That's the key.
That's right.
So I didn't know that because my mother made sure. My father, he was in my life. He made sure I had every single thing that a child needed. I had more than what I needed. I was the only child at that time, and so and my cousin Tracy, same thing. And so we grew up in this very nurturing environment, and we went to church, Methodist, by training and upbringing, still Methodist today. And so we always had that. My faith activated. I was baptized at the age of 12, and I just knew that was the time I need to take responsibility for myself. That's what I was brought up believing that. And so for me, the way that I truly connect with God, and I think I said it earlier today, I go outside. I go and listen to nature. I have to unplug from the devices and the noise and listen to what he is telling me, how he's ordering my steps. And so that's something I've had in me at a very young age. Now, I remember when I was high school, transitioning to college, I reached a point where I said I wanted to understand the Bible. And so what I would do every night is I would just try to read a verse, a chapter. Really, it would be a chapter at a time. I try to read a chapter at a time. Now I would tell you, for me anyway, that might not have been the best practice, because the next thing I know, I wake up the next morning with the Bible laid out somewhere on me. But I was determined.
Somewhere around
We've all
the
done that.
I was determined to read that book. Okay, and so anyway, I just and I still have the Bible now. My grandmother gave it to me, and what I do is, like, the passages that really mean something, I go and write it and I say, all right, I gotta keep this one. And so anyway, the Lord has always been a part of my life, and it's through the challenges, because I'm reflecting now. The challenges is where and God has a way of reminding you. If everything's going well, you can tend to forget about God.
Yeah.
You can tend to not pray as fervently, or you
Take a little too much credit for it.
Yeah, I got this. This is me. I got it. But that's what I love about the Lord, is that he will go and, whether you want him to or not, he'll remind you. And he will allow for you to be reminded. Right. And get you back in shape, kind of like a personal trainer. All right, it's time to come back over here. You get a little too far away from me. Okay, so let's get back right here, because the challenges, and I say challenges, but even the good things in the world, the distractions, good and bad, of the world, can make you forget why you do what you do. And so, getting into why I do what I do, I grew up in poverty, but my family was strong. But my teachers, I remember 1981, I'm in the first grade, I had a teacher, beautiful woman, white female, who treated me like I was her child. And even in the first grade, I was like, but I look different. I knew something was different. Okay, but I couldn't really wrap my mind around it. She loved me. And from there, I saw others throughout, male, female, white, black. The teachers loved me. My 7th grade teacher, my first male teacher, he inspired me to become a teacher. Okay, and I said, in the 7th grade, I said, I think I might want to get into this gig right here. And I had another 7th grade teacher. It was her first year. She gave me my voice. I was shy when I was coming up, but she helped me find my voice. And again, my side note being, I have been supported by people of all races. I don't have this story where only one race opened the doors for me. The doors have been opened for me by a multitude of people, young, old, black, white, male, female, homosexual, straight, you name, they've all opened the doors for me, and I have to be, I'm appreciative of that. And so anyway, going back to that faith walk, I was blessed to be surrounded by teachers that made me grow into who I am today. My mission is that the children of Valdosta City get that same experience, that same opportunity. That's why I fight for them, because I could have become a statistic. I'm not, because I had teachers who were there cheering me on. And I need to make sure that every child that's under a roof in Valdosta City gets that same opportunity. It's only fair. It's only fair for me to return what was given to me.
It's very evident. It's more than a job to you. It's a calling.
This is a calling.
Yeah, and God's anointed you to do what you do. It's very evident. You got a passion. One thing you said about when times are good and things are easy. A lot of times it's when we get locked into those routines. We do the same thing over. We know our way. It's kind of like it's kind of like a GPS. I don't need the GPS because I've been to the same place the same way every week.
Right.
But it's funny how all of a sudden a road will go out or a bridge needs repaired. And then you wind up over here and you got to figure out how to get back, and you can't do it without God.
That's right.
You got to have him. And I think that's important. One thing you've done, and I think you said, I can't remember if it was what school system you were in, and Jeremy had asked you the question, what brought you here? And you said, well, it was time for you didn't say these words, but a challenge.
Yeah.
And I feel like as long as we continue to grow, stretch, and face those challenges, it strengthens our dependency on God. And would you agree with that?
I definitely agree with it. I am 110% convinced that God ordained my steps to be here in Valdosta City Schools. And I embrace that. And a lot of times when success finds us, we don't want to always embrace that. We want to say, oh, it was just luck, or, I guess I'm the person. I'm not really sure. Valdosta City Schools cannot afford for me not to be confident
That's right.
in the fact that I'm the leader.
That's right.
My job is to protect these children. If there's a shooter, I have to be the first one at the doorstep. If there's a fire, I have to be the last one out. The children, the parents, the community should expect nothing less from me than being able to give it everything I have. I have to have conviction about my purpose and my placement here. And that's where I am. I say that, if God is for me, then who shall be against me? Sure. And he said, I'm supposed to be in Valdosta City Schools, and I'm going to serve to the best of my ability. If it gets to a place where I no longer can fulfill God's mission for me, then I won't be here. And I don't intend for that to be for a long time.
Well, it speaks volumes to, and I've said this to other guests before, we are known in Lowndes County and Valdosta, especially with our sports programs, not just our sports programs, though, but so many, for the victory, for winning. We can't have that and continue to have that if we don't continue to bring in strong leadership, strong conviction, people like you. So thank you. Thank you for what you do on behalf of us, the entire city and county, because it is so evident. My background's not a lot different. When you were talking about the janitor, I remember when I was in the first grade, I lived in a home. My mother wasn't in the picture. It was me, my brother, and my father. My father worked in a sawmill in Hoboken, Georgia.
Okay.
And I went to school in Pierce County.
Okay.
And so he would have to drop me off. I was the first one at school because he'd have to drop me off. And I couldn't wait for the janitor to get there because he'd unlock the door to my classroom and I'd go in and sit.
That's right.
And get started. My first grade teacher, Miss Norris, she knew I was a little bit behind everybody else. And what we would do in first grade is we had the big paper with the 3 lines on it and the big Mo pencil that we pulled out of the milk crate, the egg crate. And I would go in and I would be able to write what was on the board Wednesday, February 27th. It was every day I remember saying. And I would be almost done when all the other kids were starting, just so we could finish at the same time. I don't remember every school teacher I ever had or every employee of every school, but I remember that janitor that would always smile at me with his big old bunch of keys, open that door and say, "Good morning, Jonathan." He'd call me by my given name. And you don't forget that.
That's right.
I still remember him. I still remember Miss Norris helping me get, and kids need that. At one time, Valdosta was one of the richest cities per capita in the nation, not just Georgia. And this poverty thing's real. There's a lot of people hurting, a lot of people feeling it. And that's part, and you realize that's part of your calling, not just to teach them, but to be able to have empathy with them, to see where they are, to see where they live, to know that. So that's amazing. It's great. This has been one of my favorite interviews we've ever done. It's been great.
Yeah, it's appreciate what you do, and our hope and prayer is that you do get to finish your career here
Well,
and fulfill the mission.
That's it. We're saying go Cats, and you have me now, so you can't let me go. I'm sorry, I'm here.
Well, we look forward to having you back if that'd be all right.
I'd love to come
follow
back.
up on
I've
some of
enjoyed
these.
this. Yeah.
Thank you a lot. Appreciate you.
Go Cats.